Sometimes, the quietest places hold the loudest stories. Nestled between pine-covered hills and whispering creeks lies Pine Hollow, a forgotten little town in Northern California. The kind of town you don't find on most maps, a place where the wind smells like sap, the sky turns gold at sunset, and time walks, not runs. But in that quiet, something extraordinary stirred in a small wooden cabin just past the old logging trail. Lived a wide-eyed, wild-hearted 10-year-old girl, and her father Mike, a soft-spoken man with calloused hands and tired eyes. Life had changed for them 2 years ago when Ellie's mom passed away in a winter accident. Since then, their world had shrunk to just the two of them, man the forest that surrounded their home. But there was one more member of that small family. Scout, an Australian shepherd with a coat like storm clouds and eyes the color of warm honey. He'd wandered into town 3 years ago, skinny, limping, no tags, no home. Some folks said he came down from the mountain trails after a fire scared the wildlife. Others thought he had been abandoned. But when Scout saw Ellie, he stopped, sat down, just stared, and Ellie knelt beside him like she'd been waiting for him all along. From that day on, Scout never left her side. They grew up together. Morning walks beneath dew-drenched trees. Afternoon hide-and-seek games in the golden grass. Long hikes where Ellie would laugh, arms out like wings, and Scout would chase her shadow through the tall ferns. He had a way of watching her like a guardian spirit. A tilt of the head when she was sad. A gentle nudge when she needed comfort. Mike used to say that dog doesn't just love her, he understands her. At night, Scout would curl up at the foot of Ellie's bed, tail thumping softly as she read stories by flashlight. To her, Scout wasn't just a dog. He was a brother, a protector, and her very best friend in the world. But that summer, something changed. Scout started acting strange. He began to spend hours sitting at the edge of the clearing, just where the cabin met the forest. Ears pricked, eyes narrowed, body tense. Sometimes he'd growl not loud, just low, like a warning. Meant for the wind, Ellie tried to play with him, but Scout kept glancing toward the trees, as if he was listening to something they couldn't hear. Mike chuckled it off. "It's probably a coyote out there spooking him," he said, ruffling Scout's ears. "Maybe a raccoon." But Ellie wasn't so sure. Scout had always been calm, patient, wise. This wasn't fear. It wasn't even curiosity. It was like he knew something, like the forest was trying to tell him a secret. Then one night, the wind shifted. It was just past midnight. The kind of night where everything feels still like the earth. It's holding its breath. Scout sat up suddenly from his spot on Ellie's bed, nose twitching, ears alert. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Then he barked once, twice, loud. Urgent. He jumped off the bed and raced to the front door, barking and scratching. Mike woke with a start. Scout was frantic now. He barked again, a word the forest. Mike opened the door, thinking maybe a deer had wandered close, but what he saw wasn't an animal far beyond the tree line. Barely visible across the dark ridge was a faint orange glow. It looked like the sun had forgotten to go to sleep. But this was no sunset. This was something else. Scout paced by the porch, growling at the night air, barking into the wind like he was trying to warn the world. Ellie stepped outside, barefoot and wide-eyed. She grabbed Scout by the collar. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Scout didn't look at her. He just kept barking, eyes locked on that glow in the distance, and at that moment it began. The fire. The danger. The race against time, and the story of a loyal dog who didn't just sense what was coming. He risked everything, save the ones he loved. There are moments in life when time stands still, and others when it races faster than fear can catch up. That night in Pine Hollow, time ran. Scout had sensed it before anyone else. Long before the first flame touched the trees. Long before the sirens. Before the smoke, it began with a glow, faint, flickering behind the ridgeline like a dying campfire. But this fire wasn't dying. It was waking, hungry, alive. Mike stood, frozen on the porch, eyes squinting at the horizon. He wanted to believe it was nothing, maybe headlights on a distant trail, but Scout was barking, wild and sharp, not scared. Urgent dot inside, Ellie tugged on her boots, half asleep but fully alert now. She grabbed her flashlight, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. "Dad," she called out, "what's happening?" Mike didn't answer. He just kept staring. Then he whispered something Ellie would never forget. "That's not light. That's fire." Scout bolted from the porch, barking louder than ever. He ran not into the woods, but down the dirt road that led toward town. Ellie cried out his name. "Scout, come back." But he didn't stop. He was running with purpose. You see, some dogs bark when they're afraid, some hide. But Scout warned. And that's exactly what he did. He tore through the night like a streak of gray lightning. A pause, pounding the earth. Heart beating with a mission, by the time he reached the ranger station near the edge of Pine Hollow, his sides were heaving and smoke was already in the air. Inside the watch cabin, Ranger Jenkins had fallen asleep at his desk, radio crackling quietly beside him. He didn't hear the fire, but he heard Scout, a piercing bark. Then another. Then frantic scratching on the door. Jenkins groaned, grabbed a flashlight, and opened the door with a scowl. What in the world? And then he saw it. That glow, now bigger, redder, angrier, creeping over the ridge like a wave of molten sky. His blood ran cold. He grabbed the emergency radio. His hands shook as he spoke. "Base Command, this is Hollow Station. I've got visible fire above Timberline Ridge. It's big. It's moving fast." Within minutes, the town's emergency sirens screamed to life, going through the valley, like a waking nightmare. Back at the cabin, Ellie and Mike stood in the doorway, staring at the rising smoke. Red embers glowed in the sky like falling stars. Mike knelt beside his daughter and said quietly, "We need to go now." They packed quickly, just the essentials. A photo of Ellie's mom, a few clothes, but Ellie's eyes kept scanning the road. "Scout," she whispered. "Where is Scout?" Just then, headlights approached. Ranger Jenkins pulled up in his Jeep, motioning frantically. "Fire's heading straight for this ridge. You've got 20 minutes at most." He paused. "Your dog. He's the reason I called it in. That mutt saved the whole valley." Ellie's breath caught in her throat. Scout had warned them. He'd known. But now he was out there, alone. The fire was no longer a distant glow. It was roaring, moving downhill with terrifying speed, devouring trees like paper. Helicopters circled. Overhead, flames leapt 100 feet high. People scrambled, grabbing kids, pets, whatever they could. The roads were jammed with cars, red taillights, like a river of fear pouring out of town. Amid the chaos, Ellie sat in the back of the truck, clutching a blanket, but her heart was miles away. "I have to find him," she whispered to herself. But Mike gently touched her shoulder. "He'll come back," he said. "Scout always comes back." But Ellie wasn't so sure this time, because somewhere out there, beyond the smoke and trees and flames, Scout had turned around. He had done his job. He'd warned the humans, saved the town. But something inside him wouldn't let him leave yet. Scout's ears twitched. There was a sound, a faint cry, a rustle, a human voice. Deep in the woods, not everyone had gotten out, and Scout wasn't done being a hero. Not yet. They say true heroes don't wear capes. Some have fur, 4 paws, and a heart that doesn't know fear. By the time the wildfire reached the first ridge of Pine Hollow, flames were moving faster than any man could run. Trees exploded. Winds screamed. The sky turned from blue to black dot, and in the middle of it all, Scout was running back into the danger. On the other side of town, the evacuation had begun. Families scrambled to pack their lives into duffel bags and car trunks. Kids clutched toys, mothers cried into their sleeves. Elderly neighbors were helped into vans. The once quiet town was now a chorus of sirens, shouted orders, and panicked voices. Ellie sat in the passenger seat of her dad's old pickup, staring. through the windshield with wide, searching eyes. "Where is he?" she whispered. No one could answer. Scout hadn't come back. Mike squeezed her hand. "He's smart. He'll find us. You know, Scout?" But in Ellie's heart, a storm was building because she did know Scout. And if he hadn't returned, it meant he was out there for a reason. Smoke swirled around him like a living thing. Scout's lungs burned. His paws stung against hot earth. But he didn't stop. His ears twitched. There it was. Again a voice thin, cracking. "Human help. Someone." Scout veered left, weaving through smoke and brush, instincts sharp. He crossed a dry stream and climbed a low ridge until he saw the Mr. and Mrs. McKinney, the elderly couple from the far end of the valley. They were stuck on their porch. Their car wouldn't start. Their radio was dead. They had no idea. The town was evacuating, but Scout found them. He barked once, loud and clear. Then he ran a few steps forward, stopped, looked back. Mrs. McKinney clutched her husband's arm. I think he's trying to lead us," Scout barked. Again, urgent, desperate, and slowly, the McKinneys followed. Step by step. Cane arm, Scout cane arm, Scout. The smoke grew thicker. The heat pressed in. But Scout led the way down through the back trail Ellie had once shown him. Past the old fire break, toward a gravel road, and just when the flames roared nearest, his rescue truck came around the bend. They saw the couple stumble out of the trees, cuffing, eyes wide with disbelief. Behind them, limping, wheezing, blackened with soot, Scout. A firefighter rushed out. "How the heck did you get out of there?" Mrs. McKinney's voice cracked. "The dog. He saved us." Scout wagged his tail once before collapsing into the grass, exhausted but alive. At the emergency shelter, hours passed. The fire was still burning, but crews had gained ground. Rain was coming. People were safe, but Scout was still missing. Ellie sat curled in a blanket by the exit, eyes locked. On every door, every shape. Refusing to eat, refusing to sleep, until a commotion near the gate. A firefighter with suit on his face walked in, carrying something in his arms. Gray fur. Suit streaked, ears drooped, tail barely moving. Ellie stood up so fast her chair fell. "Over, Scout." He lifted his head weakly. One bark. Just for her. She ran to him, tears streaming down her cheeks. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held him like she never wanted to let go. People clapped. Rangers nodded. Even the rescue workers smiled, because they all knew that dog wasn't just brave, he was love. Wrapped in fur and fire, Scout had done more than warn them. He had saved lives, risked his own. And in doing so, he reminded everyone in Pine Hollow what loyalty really looks like. Not a word, not a promise. But a choice. 1,000 silent choices to stand beside the ones you love. Even when the world burns, some heroes fade quietly into memory. Others leave paw prints that time will never erase. After the fire, Pine Hollow didn't look the same. Charred trees stood like blackened skeletons. Hills that once danced with green had turned to ash. But the people were alive because one dog had raised his voice when no one else could hear the danger, because Scout had run toward the fire. When everyone else ran from it, it took Scout weeks to recover. Smoke had scorched his lungs. His pads were raw. His thick gray fur was singed. In places at the emergency shelter, Ellie stayed by his side every hour. She fed him by hand, cleaned his wounds, and whispered stories to him like she used to. Sometimes she'd rest her head against his side just to feel him breathe. "Remember the old trail, Scout?" she'd whisper. "You knew how to find it, even in the dark." And he'd thump his tail just once, but it was enough. Word spread quickly. A small-town pup had saved lives, warned the rangers, led an elderly couple to safety, braved flames without a second thought. Newspapers came, then news crews. A photo of Scout wrapped in a firefighter's jacket. Resting beside Ellie made headlines across the state. People began calling him the American pup, a symbol of loyalty, courage. and the deep, unspoken love between a child and her dog. 3 weeks later, Pine Hollow held a town ceremony in the old square. Smoke still hung faint in the air, but people came. Farmers, firefighters, teachers, even tourists who had heard the story. A stage had been set beneath a banner that read, "To our four-legged hero, thank you, Scout." Ellie stood in the front row, Scout beside her, now walking slowly but proudly. His fur had grown back in patches, and his eyes sparkled again. The mayor took the podium. "In our darkest moment," she said, "a dog reminded us what bravery really looks like." He didn't wait to be asked. He didn't weigh the risk. He just acted. Because love doesn't hesitate. Then she knelt and gently placed a medal around Scout's neck. A small, shining silver disc engraved with 2 words, "Loyal Heart." The crowd rose in applause. Scout didn't bark. He just looked up at Ellie, calm, steady, devoted. Life returned to Pine Hollow slowly. The forest would take years to regrow, but seeds had already been planted. New leaves would rise, new memories would form, and through it all, Scout stayed by Ellie's side like he always had. He no longer needed to chase squirrels or run through fields. Now, he sat on the porch, head resting on Ellie's feet, eyes watching the horizon, not with fear, but with peace. He had done what he came to do, and in doing it, he reminded everyone of something simple but true, that courage isn't about strength, it's about love, and loyalty. Means never turning away no matter the flames. Years later, when Ellie grew older, she would tell Scout's story again and again, to her own kids, to neighbors, to strangers who passed through Pine Hollow. They'd listen with wide eyes as she described the night the sky caught fire and the dog who barked first, ran hardest, and never gave up. And every time she'd end with the same words. "He didn't save us because he was told to. He saved us because he loved us." Asterisk moral message, voice calm and warm the heart of a dog is a quiet kind of heroism. It beats not for praise, but for the ones it loves. Thank you for listening to Loyalty_Tales. If this story moved you, subscribe for more true and fictional tales of canine courage, loyalty, and love.